Hello, we are exploring the scriptures for this Sunday, February 25th. This is coming to you on February the 20th. These scriptures are associated with our study through Lent, Jesus' vision for your one wild and precious life, on things like poverty, hunger, polarization, inclusion, and more. And the focus of the study really is, rather than looking at the last words that Jesus spoke, let's look at the first words that Jesus taught or spoke, or the first lessons that Jesus imparted, as that's going to give us more of a hint of how it is that we unlock a life and journey with God, and how we ultimately look at the end of life of a life well lived in our connection with God. So the first 2 weeks, I skipped over his first chapter, which focused on the call of the disciples as the first of the things that Jesus does, or the first episode in Jesus's life, because we had two of those during the season of Epiphany. And I started right with the what came in Jesus going to his hometown and teaching in the temple there as his first real lesson. We might call it in some ways his agenda for his life and his ministry, or his stump speech. But more than being a speech, this is really what Jesus said his life was going to be all about, and in some ways also was an interpretation of those who seek a life with God also should reflect the same lesson coming out of the prophet Isaiah. We're going to find this further developed in the scripture passage that we have today, which is very, very well known. It's used typically on the occasion of All Saints, so the first Sunday in November, and we know it generally by the term the Beatitudes. Beatitudes, or the blessings, might be another way of interpreting this. So this is Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. In other places it's on a plain, but it's a teaching, a thing that Jesus imparts to a crowd that has gathered around him. And this is laying out a very different sense of those who are favored, who are seen perhaps that are otherwise unseen. And this represents kind of a reversal of a traditional understanding of blessing. This certainly preaches against what we might call prosperity gospel, that those who enjoy a comfortable life and a good well-being are simply those who've managed to live a holier life, and so they are blessed by God with those comforts. Jesus is saying in some ways that equation is flipped in God's eyes by highlighting those who otherwise are set aside, rejected, not seen, not even considered perhaps even fully people, or are known only by their afflictions or by other realities in their life rather than by their personhood, by the person that God knows them to be. And when Jesus says that blessing or they are beautiful, it is theirs, or those who are going to be blessed, it's not only to provide prophetic hope to those who are in this situation, but also a call to change the situation that has created this reality in and of itself, that there are these divisions and separations, those who are not seen fully. At the same time, that it's calling those of us that might be comfortable. Here I am sitting in a warm office talking to all of you. I've got a roof over my head. I've got food in my lunchbox here, to recognize that we have a need to share what we have with others, and that there is a blessing that we also receive, not just in our sharing, but more in the relationships that we manage to develop in those that we reach out and care for and journey alongside of. Let's jump into these scriptures. I've highlighted a bunch already. I don't know how much more I'm going to say. I will read two different translations, so I'll give a little reflection after the New Revised Standard Translation, and then I'll read you the message just as a way of concluding our exploration of this Sunday's scriptures. So here we are in Matthew chapter 4, starting with verse 23, and I'll read through chapter 5, verse 11. Jesus went throughout all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness among the people. So his fame spread throughout all Syria, and they brought to him all the sick, those who were afflicted with various diseases and pains, people possessed by demons or having epilepsy or afflicted with paralysis, and he cured them. And great crowds followed him from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and from beyond the Jordan. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. So we begin this passage by learning that very quickly Jesus' notoriety really kind of exploded based on what he was doing in and around the region. It says he was going all about Galilee. And so it was a matter not only of his teaching, so picking up those religious rhythms as we highlighted last week, teaching in synagogues, proclaiming the good news, proclaiming the year of the Lord's favor, the blessing of God, of the good news of the reign of God, but also some physical and sociological healings going on, curing disease, sickness. And so that is encouraging the spread of his fame. What happens or what begins to take place is because of the notoriety of his healings, we hear that all those who were afflicted were brought to him, and that he cured them. And so this notoriety and fame led to big crowds seeking him out, wanting to get a glance, perhaps having their own affliction also cured. And we have lots of places listed where these crowds were coming from. So Jesus observes all these people that are seeking out his teaching, seeking out perhaps even more so what he could do for them. And he goes up a mountain. So mountains are always an encounter, a place where you can encounter God. Now, if he is preaching to the crowd, this is also simply good acoustics to put him in a higher place in order to allow the crowd to hear what he has to say. And after he sits down on this mountain, his disciples came to him. Now, what's really interesting here, I think, is it says, and he began to speak and taught them, saying. Now, the them here could have two potentials. One is that Jesus is actually just teaching his followers, those who he has called. The other is that Jesus is teaching the crowd. Think about how that changes depending on who Jesus's audience is here in these teachings. So upon my first hearing, I thought, I've never really pondered this, but it sounds to me like Jesus goes up a mountain for a little time apart from the crowd. The disciples come to be with him, and he begins his instruction to them. So this is trying to highlight to them, looking out at the crowd, what their focus should be. And within that also a sense of downplaying future ambitions, right? So you got these big crowds, fame, what is this going to lead to? Are the disciples thinking, hey, our pathway ahead looks great. We're going to be comfortable. It's going to be fine. There's fame. People are going to shower us with gifts. We're not going to have any problems. And Jesus here flips the script and says, look, this is what you're to be about. And it has nothing to do with the crowds. It has nothing to do with comfort. In fact, it has to do with many things that are going to put you in places of discomfort. And so we have poor in spirit, mourning, so those who have lost, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. So that's for equity, for things to be made right. Merciful. So blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. So as you are kind, so also you might expect kindness in return. Pure in heart, peacemakers. And all of these, I think, encourage us to ponder ourselves. Are our lives aligned in such a way that we could be seen among those who receive this blessing that Jesus is talking about? Are we peacemakers? Are we merciful? Are we pure in heart? Are we willing to be public or unafraid in sharing our faith, even though people may not understand and may be dismissive of it? Or do we hide that? Do we not share it? So this, if it's instruction to the disciples and to us who perhaps have heard Jesus's call, are accepting this life, want to live a full life, Jesus is saying a full life means this. It does not mean a life full of stuff. It doesn't mean a life full of comfort. It means a life full of blessing. And how do those blessings, how does that fullness come? Well, these are the aspects in which that fullness occurs. I'm going to read the Message, and that may help provide perhaps a little different take on the same passage. It's interesting when I think of this passage that comes in other places, often following the blessing also are these words of woe. But woe to you who are comfortable, for you will be empty. Woe this. And I think when we just have the blessing piece of this, we miss also that Jesus is trying to forewarn that the things that we think are going to make life simple and easy are actually going to complicate the journey and muddy the waters. We won't have clarity in the sense of God's presence in our lives, or will muddy the waters in thinking that our comforts are proof of God's presence. If you go back to the beginning of this when I talked about the prosperity gospel. So this is from the Message, and if something really pops out here, I'll say a little more, but most likely this is how I will conclude our time of exploring Sunday Scriptures this week. From there he went all over Galilee. He used synagogues for meeting places and taught people the truth of God. God's kingdom was his theme, that beginning right now they were under God's government, a good government. He also healed people of their diseases and of the bad effects of their bad lives. Word got around the entire Roman province of Syria. People brought anybody with a sickness, whether mental, emotional, or physical, and Jesus healed them, one and all. More and more people came, the momentum gathering. Besides those from Galilee, crowds came from the 10 towns across the lake, others up from Jerusalem and Judea, still others from across the Jordan. When Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him, the committed, climbed with him. And arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companions. So this makes clear that it's the disciples he's talking to. This is what he said. You are blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink in the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you'll find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. This is a much different translation. I think it really pulls out the depth of the meaning in this passage. I hope you'll return to it again this week, and I look forward to exploring next week's scriptures with you as we continue our series throughout Lent. God bless you.